Welcome back to our bootcamp today. We're going to understand some really important concepts that form the foundation of how Linux works. Think of this as learning the why before getting into the how, and that will be in our hands-on class. Okay, just like any city has systems of addresses and rules about who can enter different buildings, Linux has its own way of organizing files and controlling who can access them. Okay, now let's break this down in simple terms. All right, first let's talk about how Linux organizes everything. In Linux, everything is organized in a tree structure. Imagine an upside down tree where everything branches down from a single point called the root. All right. But before we go into that deeper, let's talk about absolute paths. An absolute path can be explained in this way. Let's imagine that you're giving someone directions to find a specific book in a huge library. You start from the main entrance, which is what we refer to as the root, and depicted by the /. From the main entrance, then you guide them to the second floor, then you tell them to go to the science section, and then you tell them to go to the physics shelf. And then, there's a part of the physics shelf that has quantum mechanics books, and that's where you can find the book. In Linux, this is a complete direction from start to finish, and it's called an absolute path. It works like a GPS, like GPS coordinates, right? It works no matter where you are in the system, it works. Relative paths is another one we got to talk about. Now that you know absolute path being the full address from the beginning to the end to where you want to get to, relative path is a little different. Now, if you're already in the science section of that library, we don't need to tell that person to start from the entrance again. So you can just go straight to the physics shelf and find the book that you're looking for from there. That's what we refer to as a relative path. Now, with a relative path, it depends on where you are currently. And it's like giving directions based on your current location. The beauty is, Linux does not care which one you use. Both will always get you to your destination. It's just about what makes more sense in each situation. And in each situation, it can be a thing of maybe you're in a position that is relative to the path that you're going to or not. And there are many other reasons why you will use these things. So I think Linux is more about how creatively you think. I think the lazy people would be the best Linux administrators because they would know how to bend the commands in ways that suit them the most. Now let's talk about home directories. Think of Linux like a huge apartment building, right? And in this building, every user gets their own apartment, which is what we refer to as the home directory. Your apartment is your own private space where you keep your own stuff, okay? Now, the building has common areas where everyone can access. In Linux, it can be directories like the /etc or /usr. But one thing you should know is that your own apartment number is your username. So if your username is Femi, that means that your home directory will be /home/Femi. The structure for that is /home/username. So whatever your username is, that's where your home directory will be. It's just going to be /home/your username. The only person that has a different home directory is the root user. The root user's home directory is in /root. But every other person is /home/your username. Now, your home directory is special because it's the only place where you have full control. One, it's also where all your personal settings are stored. Other users can't peek into your space unless you allow it. They can't be peeping in or, nothing like that except you allow it. Okay? Now, Linux treats it as your base of operations, right? See, in the army, they will always have their own barracks. So they plan everything from their barracks before they move out for their operations, right? So see your home directory as your own base of operations. When you log in, Linux drops you into your home directory. When you log in afresh, it drops you straight into your home directory, just like how you would naturally go to your apartment whenever you come home, or how you find yourself in your apartment when you wake up in the morning. Now let's go ahead and talk about users and groups, okay? To understand users and groups, let's use a school analogy. Every student is a user with their own ID card. And that means that every user has their own unique ID, just like every student has their own unique ID, maybe like the matric number or whatever unique ID number that is assigned to each student. Now, students can belong to different clubs, which is what we are using to explain groups here. They can belong to different clubs, and some students might be class representatives where they are having special privileges, right? Class captains and whatnot. Now, teachers have different access levels than students, all right? That shows that, even within Linux, different users have different levels of access, all right? It's not like the Animal Farm where all animals are equal. No, everybody is not equal. You get access based on your role and based on what you should be doing. Now, every user is unique. Like I said, they have their own space. Users can belong to multiple groups, and some groups have special powers, like administrators. Okay, now the system uses these users and group relationships to decide who can do what in your Linux environment. It's like having different access cards in a building, and then maybe your own access card might allow you into the gym and the library, while your teacher's access card will allow the teacher to those facilities and also the staff room, right? So that shows that your access cards give you access to different things, even if it's within the same building or the access cards look alike. Let's now talk about file permissions. Let's talk about file permissions, which is basically how Linux controls who can do what with files and directories. For those of you that are hearing directory for the first time, when I say directory, I'm only talking about what you refer to as folders in your Windows world. Think of each file like a locker with 3 different types of access, right? Now, the first access is the read access. The second one is the write. The third one is the execute. With read, whoever has read access will be able to see what's inside a file. Whoever has write access will be able to write, change things, edit it, and save the file. Whoever has executing access will be able to execute the file. See that like one of your executable files that you use in installing programs, maybe like the .exe. You need to have an execute file, execute permission to be able to, install such a file or an installable file. Now, for each file, Linux would ask 3 questions. What can the user do? What can people in the same group with the user do to this file? And what can everyone else do? Let me say that differently. With this file, Linux will check what right does the owner of the file have, which is the first person. Then Linux will check again. What right do the people who are in the same group as the owner, what rights do they have on this file? And then lastly, it will check what every other person can do to this file. And when we say every other person, we're talking about the people that are not the owner and they are not in the group of the owner. It's similar how you have full access to your own locker, but your sports team, your teammates might be able to look inside your locker, but not be able to take anything from it, right? And then other students that are not in your team cannot even access it at all because they can't even get into the changing room where that locker is. Okay, so this system is what keeps everyone's files safe and private while allowing collaboration when needed. Today, we have covered the fundamental concepts of how Linux organizes their files and controls access. We talked about paths, that paths are just addresses in the Linux world. Your home directory is your own personal space. Users and groups control who you are and what team you are part of. Permissions protect your file and control access. In our class today, we will get hands-on with commands that let us work with all of these concepts. Understanding these basics will make learning the commands a lot more easier. Remember, Linux is logical. Once you understand the why, the how becomes much clearer and much easier. So I'm going to see you in class today where we will put all of this into practice. Thank you very much and see you soon.